trying to think of a big issue that went wrong. We don't always like to talk about the issues that go wrong, because if they go wrong on the back end, but nobody notices on the other end, did it really go wrong?
Hello, and welcome to Behind the Screens, IT at ND, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of the IT solutions consultants at the University of Notre Dame. Here, we explore the challenges they face, the innovative solutions they provide, and the tips and tricks that can help you make the most out of your technology. I'm Scooter, Director of Information Technology for the College of Arts and Letters. We're thrilled to have you with us today. Krista is out working today on preparation for the IT retreat. So joining me as co-host for today is our producer, Andy Janetsky. Hi, Andy.
Hi there. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, thanks for joining us today. And our guest is Sean DeWeerd, a video engineer for Indie Studios. Hi, Sean.
Hi, thanks for having me on to the show.
So we've got a lot of questions for you about Indie Studios and your role as a sort of a broadcast engineer and some other things. But just to get us started, can you give us a high-level overview of what you do and how long you've been here at Notre Dame?
So I've been with the university since the spring of 2018. I got brought in as what they call a video utility, so just supporting the in-venue support for the broadcasts that we do here at the university. And then moved into the video engineering role in July of 2019. And that role really is I'm the technical lead on the majority of live events that happen off the university, live broadcasts. That could be anything from an athletics event for ESPN, a hockey game for NBC, football board show for the video board show, working with the Performing Arts Center for the Fish Off music competition, or a variety of things across campus.
So we understand that your work kind of breaks down into a couple of big categories, like you just described. So there are obviously the athletic events. There are the other events, so concerts and other things. Let's start with some of the athletic things. So you're working with game day productions. You're obviously going to be very busy. What's your role on game day, and what's your role as you prepare for game day?
Oh boy, that's a loaded question.
Right?
I would say 70 to 75% of all of the work that I do is athletics facing.
Okay.
We support almost every Olympic sport that athletics has. It could be anywhere from in the fall doing a volleyball broadcast, but not just the broadcast, also the in-venue board show.
Mm.
So there are two broadcasts sometimes associated with one sport. We do volleyball, we do basketball, men's and women's basketball, we do hockey, men's and women's soccer, men's and women's lacrosse, baseball and softball, some swimming and diving, track and field. We support pretty much any live athletic event that they put on, they did want to do a broadcast for.
Oh my gosh. And how many folks are on your team doing all of those?
There are 3 video engineers, plus we hire a handful of freelance utilities that come in and support us too. So there are 3 main engineers that support most of those broadcasts.
And obviously some of those sports are busier, crazier than others. When you're looking at like high pressure events and so forth, I'm imagining football is on the top of that list.
Yeah. So surrounding football, right? Football is the big one, right? We support and do the full production for the video board show that comes in. But on top of that, we also support NBC and their broadcasts. So when NBC brings their production truck, I am the face of Notre Dame Studios that interfaces with the truck that says, all right, we want to get these camera feeds from you. You guys want to get these camera feeds from us. Let's have a good broadcast. And we share our resources with them. So,
and how does that typically differ from, like a football game versus, like you mentioned, volleyball or like a soccer match? Like the complexity is a little different. Kind of explain those.
Yeah. So for the football, NBC sends an entire production team, a truck. They do the entire production. For a volleyball match or a higher level basketball game, we do those productions internally. So athletics pays Notre Dame Studios to put to crew and to technically do those shows. Athletics provides the producer, the director, and some of those other core control room locations, but technically the show is all done by Notre Dame Studios. So let's move back to a short time ago on the 12th of December, the game that was on ESPN, women's basketball versus UConn, that game was done entirely out of our control room. So ESPN sent a director, a producer, an associate director, an associate font graphics person, And we did that show out of our space. So what that means is ESPN didn't send a big production truck like you would see at larger events. With our infrastructure we have with ESPN and our fiber connectivity for them, we're able to do those types of games essentially remotely for ESPN.
And that has to be like a very trusted partner with ESPN, right?
Yeah, so we're part of what they call their college control room or school control room program. So it's a tried and true program for them. They do a lot with the SEC and a lot with the ACC schools and other smaller conferences.
Tell us a little more about that program. What's that about?
So in 2019, they launched the ACC Network, which is a network solely focused on schools that are in the ACC. So for all of our Olympic sports outside of hockey, which is on the Big Ten, the content that is produced is through the Athletic Coast Conference. So when we do those productions, it's either on what they call the ACC Network Extra, which is their web platform. So the lower tiered games, the odd hours games get just put on the web. We stream them to the web, but they're still full productions. Then we do varying levels of productions for ESPN based on ranking and what they decide takes priority. But we could be on the web, we could be on ACC Network, we could be on ESPNU, we could be on ESPN2, or the flagship ESPN, which we were for that UConn game. So we could put productions from our control rooms onto any of those platforms for them.
Can you share a story maybe with us of something that kind of went wrong, or little crisis or something? And like, what'd you guys do? Running around like a chicken with your head cut off, I'd imagine.
What is this? A job interview?
It could be.
So we're yeah, okay. Now you got me thinking on my feet here. We have had, I would say that the number one issue that we've encountered with these productions is the quality of the fiber between venues. So across campus, we have fiber that connects to our central equipment room. All over campus, right? All of the athletic facilities, Washington Hall, the DeBartolo Performing Arts Center, everywhere. Keeping and maintaining that fiber and keeping it clean is very hard. And if you work in IT and if you take, if you take a fiber out of a switch or out of the wall and you don't cap it and it gets dirty and you plug it back in, well, you've just ruined somebody's day, right? So maintaining and keeping fiber clean is probably what we've struggled with the most when we're doing all these events, when we're moving equipment from venue to venue. That's probably our biggest hurdle. And I'm trying to think of a big issue that went wrong. We don't always like to talk about the issues that go wrong, because if they go wrong on the back end, but nobody notices on the other end, did it really go wrong?
That's very esoteric.
Yeah, and I think that's what I kind of want to hear about is like, we might not have noticed things that are happening in the background.
Yeah,
I mean, are you panicking or doing certain things?
Yeah, there are, because we're such a flexible facility and I can go into the router and make changes in any of the control rooms. I will say that there was one when I had first started here and I was trusted with doing a lower tiered show that was just on the web, but there was also an ESPN production happening in the other room. And so I went in and made a change to my control room, hit the button, and then that room started screaming because I had just routed bars and tone onto ESPN.
Oh.
Because I thought I was in PCR1 when I was in PCR2.
Oh boy. So
there is a level of awareness you have to have when there are other large productions going on, that you don't just go, oh, nobody's using that control room, nobody's using that space. So there are ways you can hurt yourself by not checking and just being aware of what's happening in the other rooms.
Yeah. Sounds like a very, very detail oriented sort of.
Yeah, it's there is a lot. If I had to think about it, I believe we have somewhere in the 700 to 800 inputs to our router and like 1,100 to 1,200 destinations on our router that we can route to. So trying to keep track of all that, it can be a little bit complicated.
So how are you feeling about this Friday? So for everybody that's listening in, we're recording this on Monday, the 16th.
Yep.
And we're looking forward to the playoff game here in a few days.
Yeah. So
what's going through your head?
We are used to doing football, right? We're Notre Dame. We do football. I think we did 6 home games this past year. This one is going to be quite a bit different just because of the high visibility. But what a lot of people don't realize is that it's going to be a different broadcaster, a different broadcast partner. NBC has the home football rights for Notre Dame football. except for the college football playoffs, which those go to ESPN and Turner and a couple other broadcast partners. So we now have to interface our entire production, our video board production, with ESPN. There has not been another broadcast partner really in the stadium outside of like NHL Winter Classic, Liverpool, Dortmund. We did that game. Celtic versus Chelsea. That was a truck broadcast. We did the video board show. There's a lot of other things that go in there, but for football, really, NBC has been the home of Notre Dame football for so long. It's been interesting to, now it's ESPN. And I have to also remember it's not on Saturday, it's on Friday. So
right.
Trying to remember, okay, I have to go to work at 6 a.m. on Saturday. No, it's 6 a.m. on Friday. So
yeah, do make sure you show up.
yeah. So, but partnering with them because of the level of the broadcast, game day is going to be here. So it's making sure that they have the feeds they need. The truck's going to be here, making sure they have the feeds that we need to get from them, plus what they need from us, plus just supporting them as a broadcast partner.
So besides being a bigger production because of the playoffs and what it is, I mean, you mentioned before ESPN is a partner we have for other sports.
Yes.
So knowing that NBC is the normal broadcast partner for football, is this any different besides being a bigger production, or what differences are there when it comes to football?
It's just the higher visibility. The show from ESPN is going to be bigger. There's more cameras. There's more intricacies, right? They got permission to fly a drone during the broadcast. So they'll have, they'll have an aerial camera that's flying over so you get those really nice sweeping aerial shots, but they'll also have a drone. They have just a few different requests that came in from them saying we're going to do this a little bit differently than NBC does it. So just trying to meet those requests and making sure that we're being a good partner and getting them what they need.
And does that change your preparation any? Like, do you have more people on staff? Are you doing different checklists?
We will have more people on staff just because of the higher visibility of the game, just making sure there's one of us is going to be just strictly dealing with ESPN. One of us is just going to be in the control room. And then one of us is just going to be dealing with the on-field part of it. So Patrick is one of our engineers, and he has been the guy on the field that is the guy on the boots on the ground, works with the other freelance utilities to, hey, camera one's down. His team goes and deploys. Mike Sill, he will be interfacing with ESPN. So if ESPN says, hey, we want to see a clean feed of your video board with no graphics, he's going to be the one to make that work. And then I'm going to be in here in the control room making sure everything is buttoned up and all the buttons are being pushed in the right order.
So you mentioned earlier there's sometimes behind the scenes stuff that happen or go awry that the users or us on TV wouldn't know those are happening. What are, like, how do you prepare and look for those kind of things? Like, what are we mainly watching for with these bigger productions?
On the bigger productions, you go through a process called transmission. So an hour and a half before the game with ESPN, we call and we verify the path. We go through all of our cameras. They look at all of our cameras to make sure that nothing's glitching. We go through all of our audio to make sure it sounds good. We do a lip sync check. We do a color check, all with ESPN, right? And we can identify some of those problems early if they come up. Other than that, it's kind of you're battling the uphill until you get to game time, and then it's a hurry up and wait. And then you're just kind of observing. And then the utilities in the field are the ones, your eyes and ears out there saying, hey, this cable got stepped on. It might get damaged. Watch out for that camera. Or they're the ones running around with the light for the talent and things like that. So I'm trying to think of specific scenarios where we're looking at the program output to ESPN. We're also looking at what's getting recorded into our replay system. So I'm looking at anywhere potentially from, let's say for a football game, I'm looking at potentially 27 different feeds coming in camera-wise, but also program-wise, because we're bringing in program feeds from ESPN. We're bringing our program feed in. So looking at all those, making sure they have the right audio, making sure we're not having any timing issues, because we're an IP-based system. So it all gets timed via PTP, and that's a little bit on the technical side of it. But if we have sync issues or things like that, then I can kind of see those happening in real time.
So barring any, 100% no issues happening behind the sidelines, what's success equal? Like, how will you go through and say this stream and this podcast was successful that we can walk away from and be happy with?
Obviously a show with no technical issues, no camera problems, no hiccups, no glitches in the machines, just a good, clean produced show, right? A lot of the smaller issues may not be technical. They might just be on the production side. I can't control those. I can only help mitigate those through the technical side, being prepared on my side if a new request comes up or if they have a change in cameras or, a change in what they want to show on TV.
So let's shift gears a little bit. You've talked not just the sporting events that you do, but you have other high-profile things because we know there are other things happening both in the stadium and elsewhere on campus. What is we were pointing out your shirt that you're wearing today. Tell us a little bit about what you got
I'm
going
wearing
on.
my Garth at ND shirt.
Yep.
So when Garth Brooks announced his stadium tour, he picked Notre Dame as basically the first part of his tour. He wanted to start here and he wanted to stop here. So interfacing with that team was unique because they do their own production, right? They bring their own truck, they do all of their own production, but it went up on the video board, and he had his own video board in the venue. So from our perspective, we just supported them in terms of connectivity. How do we connect our cameras to the truck dock where our truck's going to be parked? How do we interface with your equipment? So we didn't have a whole lot to do with the show, but we had to be there to support their show to go forward. So in the venue, right, we've had the Garth Brooks concert, we did the Billy Joel concert, Liverpool, Dortmund was here, Chelsea, Celtic, those events happen in the stadium. All of the connectivity in there goes through the stadium and ultimately through some of our facility too.
Those got to be a ton of fun, though. I mean, it sounds like it's a little lighter on the workload side, but still.
Oh yeah,
Garth Brooks, Billy Joel,
it's a ton of fun, and I'll share a link with you. But I did an entire week-long time lapse from the south end zone of the stadium of the transition from the Pitt football game through the entirety of the Garth Brooks concert.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it's like a 7.5 day long time lapse of just how awful the weather was for that first Garth Brooks concert. Happened in like October 10th, I think, of 2018. And the weather was miserable, but the show went on.
Yep.
And then I've done a ton of other football time lapses based on, and I did Warner Classic time lapse. I'm a big time lapse guy. If you know me, if you're listening to this and you know me, that is not something that's just something you know about me. I love time lapses. So
we'll be sure to include that in the show notes.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
So just outside of the concerts and the other events, we support and do the production for graduation. So the main graduation ceremony that happens in the stadium, in the Joyce Center, at Compton, in DeBartolo, Performing Arts Center, all those productions come through our facility. So on the day of commencement, there are also other schools doing, it's not just the main graduation. There's also the School of Arts and Letters, there's the hooding ceremonies, there's the law degrees, there's a lot of stuff. We support all of those too on a much smaller scale. Mm. So it could be a single camera recording that gets chopped up and edited and put on the web later. It could be a single camera live streamed with OBS or Wowza or any of our other streaming platforms, or it could be in one of our smaller control rooms. On graduation day, I believe last year we did somewhere in the terms of like 17 to 18 live events simultaneously.
Oh my gosh.
For graduation, outside of the main commencement ceremony. So graduation is probably our busiest time because we also come up against the end of softball and baseball season. And in 2021, I believe it was 2021, the men's baseball team went into postseason. So we had baseball games all the way into like the middle of June. So we had games, and obviously COVID threw a whole loop and all that stuff too for graduation, right? So doing a virtual graduation in the studio, plus doing the ROTC graduation in the baseball stadium and a handful of other things too. It's the flexibility of our system to be able to do those things all together, like three engineers managing all of that across multiple venues, all those events during the days. It's a lot of preparation from our production team, and I'm very proud of them for that. And then from an execution point, it's a lot of planning, a lot of pre-production, a lot of planning.
Now you just mentioned some of the technical backbone that's making this possible. You were telling us a little bit ago about some of those technical underpinnings and how when this building was built and when this Indie Studios was formed, that you were doing some pretty innovative things at the time. Could you?
Yeah. So
Scott, dig into a little of that.
Yeah. So
stuff.
Dan Skenzel and Scott Reinhardt, who were the directors of this program of Indie Studios, they like to say that they jumped off a cliff. They held hands with our vendors and jumped off a cliff into the world of IP for video. There at the time when this facility was built, there was not a set standard for IP video. So there were some vendors that had their own flavors of IP for video transport, and then there were some that were working on a standard. The company that we ended up going with, named Everts, had their own IP standard called Aspen. That is a video and audio IP transport standard that they built. Well, as time went on, the industry rallied around a standard called SMPTE 2110, which SMPTE stands for the Society of Motion Picture Television Engineers. They are a worldwide standard, and they collectively agreed this is the standard we're going with forward. So we had to shift from a competing IP standard into a standard IP standard, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And shifting there were some leapfrogs that we had to get into, and some technical issues we had with PTP timing. And because when you get into the world of IP, it's not just here's a coax on this end and here's a coax on that end, and the video goes in between. You're now jumping between multiple switches. Everything has to be in time. And for the networking engineers that are in there, everybody knows that PTP or IGMP can cause a lot of problems with timing. And what people don't want to see on TV is audio and video sync. If those two things don't arrive at the same time, it causes problems on television.
A lot of unhappy people.
A lot of unhappy people. Yeah. So all of that has to be in time. So we have equipment that is set to do PTP, and it's set to the switches, and that's way more complicated than I care to go into right now. But if the world didn't have PTP, we wouldn't have good TV anymore.
Sure. But it sounds like, on the surface, this sounds like a very complex system. So what are we gaining for that complexity?
Flexibility, right? And the ability for me to hop onto my computer and route my video source from here to a fiber destination across campus. We have, for football and for basketball and for hockey, those locations, so the stadium, the Joyce Center, and Compton, we have IP devices on that end that I can just say, all right, I want to route camera 1 from the Joyce Center to Compton. Done. All over fiber, right? Just instantly. I don't have to have coax that's run between here and there because coax wouldn't make it that far. Right? So you're looking at just flexibility of location and flexibility of just ease of use.
And it sounded like this was fairly cutting edge in 2018. Is that still the case?
Yeah, so in 2016, this was considered I would even say bleeding edge at the time, right? Evertz only had a handful of these routers that we got on the market at the time. And I'm going to throw out some IP statistics here, right? For each port on our video router is 10 gigabit, meaning it can take 10 gig of video bandwidth. Now, you jump ahead 7 years later, 8 years later, we're looking at these new pieces of equipment that are 400 gig per port versus 10 gig per port. So we're finding that we got left behind. While we were ahead at the time, we are now woefully behind in terms of we have new equipment in that we had to get downgraded to 10 gig because they anticipated we had 25 gig, but our router doesn't support 25 gig. So we're learning quickly that we have to come up with a solution quickly, or we're going to get left behind with competing vendors that don't support 10 gig anymore, which is crazy to think about, right?
Right.
In 10 gig is a lot of bandwidth, but not when you're doing uncompressed video bandwidth at, a 720p video signal is 1.5 gig bandwidth. That's full uncompressed. 1080p is 3 gig. 4K is 12 gig, right? So you start adding on, you do 5-6 camera show, you're looking at several tens of gigabits of bandwidth that you have to try and cram down a network switch. And we're just looking at what does that solution look like going forward. And then on top of that, wrapping it up with a pretty little bow on top of what controls the IP system. Because now that you're IP, right, it used to be you had to buy it from a specific vendor. And you had to buy their control system to work because it only worked with their control system. But now that you have the standard and it works on COTS switches, we can go and buy a Cisco switch or an Arista switch and start plugging stuff in. But what controls it? So now there are software vendors we're looking at for control management of the entire system. Do we stay with the vendor we have? Do we look at new vendors? What has changed from 2016 to now? And what does the future look like? So we're in that discovery phase of working with our integrator who has hands in all over the world. And we've gotten some really good feedback on what that looks like. And this is going to be the year of planning. And then hopefully in the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to see some IP changeover, not necessarily changeover, but from going from IP to IP, but just managed better and with less equipment. We're going to be able to reduce an entire full I don't even know how tall they are, 8-foot rack of equipment into a 3 to 4 RU potentially piece of equipment, and then be able to use that other space for switches and other infrastructure.
And yet that new equipment that, like you said, is going to be 400 gig per port instead of 10.
Yeah, that's kind of the going standard right now is 400 gig. Well, if they're looking at 400 gig as bleeding edge right now, that means in 5 more years, what's it going to be? 800 gig, 1 terabit. It's crazy to think about, but that's just where, as people push higher bandwidth content, higher uncompressed bandwidth content, you have to react to allow that much bandwidth on your network.
So, Sean, I might be off base on this, but how does this translate into, I know right now if I have notifications turned on my phone for score updates and things like that during a game, there'll be times that I'm watching the game, streaming a game, and my phone updates first before a big play happens, before we get to the, you talked about the lag a little bit on the streaming side. Do you foresee that this higher bandwidth and these bigger gigabits coming out, is that going to reduce that lag a little bit, or is there other factors?
So we're already seeing that, reducing it a little bit. It all depends on your end user experience, right? There's so much between us and how it gets to the end user that I can't control that. I can only control how it gets to ESPN or to NBC or to Peacock, for example, because our hockey broadcasts are on Peacock. But your phone, you might have latency issues. Your phone might be connected at a lower speed, right? So it all depends. But with the higher bandwidths, you're seeing faster connectivity between places. So the fiber connectivity we just got some fiber equipment upgraded from ESPN to a different provider, and we're seeing a increased return. So when we do a production here, we get what they call a net return, meaning ESPN sends us the output of ESPN back to us so we can view it for continuity. And it's almost sub 1 second. Wow. To ESPN and back almost sub 1 second, which is incredible. And that's just over fiber. So it's getting encoded here, decoded there, decoded back here, all within 1 second. And yeah, that has to do with the bandwidth increases. We couldn't have done that 10 years ago.
So you mentioned athletics before, like they pay you to come do the streams and so forth, and kind of highlighting how you're a partner on campus. What other events do you guys provide support for? I know like the Office of the President has utilized your guys' stuff, but you pretty much market your services to all the campus. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we do, anybody that wants a live stream or YouTube stream, a Zoom webinar, whatever, we can do it. We have kits that can go around and we plug into Campus Network and we take we take a camera, we shoot your event, we put it on the web. We do stuff for rec sports. We do the Baraka bouts, the women's boxing club. We do Bengal bouts. We do a big production that goes on ESPN Plus for them. We do all of the club rugby streams on Campus Network, which is an incredible feat for that too. And we can go into that a little later, but we do just about anything. If somebody listening to this podcast wants us to come and record a lecture and stream it for them, we can do that. And it could be a one camera, it could be multiple cameras. You want to do a huge production in our studio and bring in remote talent from around the world via Zoom. We do ND Day. Everybody knows what ND Day is. It's Notre Dame's telethon that is about 36 hours of live content. We do that entire production in this space. Now it's spread across 2 days and multiple crews and things like that. But I like to call us the live arm of the university. Yeah, you have marketing communications that do all the pre-recorded content and the social media and that stuff, but all the live content typically comes from Notre Dame Studios.
Speaking of students and ND Day, this is a big production organization. Like, how do you involve them?
Oh boy. So if you're a student, you can just sign up and say, I want to work for you. If you don't have prior experience, you never touched a camera in your life, we'll train you. We attend a lot of the early semester meet and greets and the job fairs and stuff, and we encourage students to sign up. So if a student wants to come and run camera for a broadcast, they can run a camera. If they want to come learn the engineering side and work with me or one of our other engineers and get a little behind the scenes taste and maybe work on a show and engineer a show, they can do that too. They want to work for marketing communications, they want to design graphics, they can do that too. They want a technical direct show, hit the buttons and see what's on TV, they can do that. Direct, produce, graphics, pretty much any piece of the broadcast world that we touch, we have an avenue for students to work in. And we pay really well. So all the students that are working for us get paid. It's a great opportunity for them. We've had students that have gone on to have careers in television. We have an engineering student that worked really closely with us and did a lot of works for NBC Universal, doing video production and video engineering. So we have an avenue for students to get into markets outside the university for television, and we're working on building those partnerships up so we can encourage other vendors to come to us saying, hey, we have an internship that might suit this type of student, and we can push students down that avenue to have external internship opportunities at large national worldwide vendors.
So last episode, we talked a little bit about like personal development plans. What if staff members wanted to come and learn what you guys do?
That is actually a really good question. I would encourage them to reach out to Lynn or Scott and say they're interested in. I can't imagine we wouldn't say no, but I don't know what that looks like, to be honest. I mean,
the students are much more teachable sometimes than we are.
That is very true.
No, I think that's a great idea. I mean, it would be a unique opportunity to get some of the faculty staff that have some of their own video departments, or maybe a little bit more production experience, to have the creativity and flexibility to do their own stuff, or to use our space. You know, we teach them up, they can then come and do their own productions. And I mean, we're open. You guys can come and use our space. I am always a person that loves learning. So if somebody comes to me and says, I want to learn, I'm going to show you how, I'm going to teach you, because I like seeing that spark in people when they figure stuff out. But yeah, that'd be a very interesting concept to have staff or faculty come and actually do it.
Yeah, I mean, from my background, like I do videography on the side, drone stuff, commercials, wedding videography, and coming into that field, it was very much learning on my own, and you kind of pick up things as you go and so forth. But if I had an opportunity to come in and sit down and, hey, this is how the professional standard works, you know, it would be, I'm a life learner too, so that'd be beneficial to me. That's what I was kind of thinking.
No, I definitely could see that sparking some growth and potentially taking off. No, I really do. More often than not, we're showing them how to do things and saying, this is what you do. But it'd be nice for somebody to come say, this is what I want, and have an idea to come in and say, you guys showed me, this is what I want. It can make the production better.
Yeah.
It can grow. Yeah, no, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, there's so much you can do. Like, and once you have done it for a little while, you know those questions to ask. Mm-hmm. So I'd love to be able to come in and be like, hey, I want to get this out of this. Here's what I'm doing so far. Am I on the right page?
No, I definitely think that's a great idea.
Excellent. So take us a little bit into the future, Sean. You talked a little bit about some of the sort of technical upgrades that are coming, but let's talk about some potentially fun new services that are working their way into the broadcast system.
How much into the cloud do you want to go?
Well, yeah, so we could talk about cloud, but you mentioned to us a little bit about AI and some of the possibilities that are coming. What's new and what's coming?
Yeah, so in this, I think in the sports world, the AI is going to be very prevalent, and it's prevalent now. It already exists, but it's going to be more so in the future. You're already seeing some AI-generated replays. You're already seeing some AI-generated stats, and it's just all in real time. So stats in the sports world are so big. There is such a huge market for stats. Everybody wants to know everything about a specific player, a specific game, etc. So to be able to ingest all of that data and use AI to scrape it, and then I could sit down at a replay machine and just say, show me player number 24's fouls. If we're saying baseball, for example. And then it would just pop up and show me, here are all the clips that have player number 24 that recorded a foul instantly.
And that's pretty incredible, because you were saying that in order to do that now, I mean, there's a lot of manual tagging, a lot of coding.
Right. So if you have all of this video content that's shot that doesn't have any metadata on it, right? Metadata is what drives search engines, what drives the ability to search for stuff, right? When you have all these huge archives and you want to search for something, what do you search for, right? So we have students that they love doing this. We've had students that are like, this is what I want to do. I want to log. It's called logging. Literally just looking at the clip, saying, okay, the clip's this long. At 11 seconds, the player got the ball. He was cheering, like as much detail as you can possibly provide, so that when you go later and you go, show me all of the reacts of player number 23 celebrating a touchdown or something, it'll generate all those clips. So any data that's put in can then be searched and aggregated, so that when you're going into your instant replays, and it could exist from 20 years ago, you could say, all right, show me show me every play that Manti Te'o scored a touchdown. And you could just automatically pull all those clips available for you and say, okay, here's where they live, here's where you can pull them from, and then you can use those in your broadcast, etc.
I imagine that's huge time savings.
Huge time savings. And it's getting to the point where you can even just say, put me together a highlight reel of player number 20 of all his touchdowns. And it just puts them together in a timeline for you.
Which, highlight reels are crucial when you're, trying to showcase certain things. I coach high school basketball, and I've got girls all the time wanting me to create them recruitment videos and things like that. And that would save me a ton of time.
So the other big AI component is going to be what they call the game camera, right? The high, wide, tight that shows the whole field playing back and forth, right? A lot of what people are expecting of this is going to be, you're going to have an 8K camera that's shooting the whole field. And then you're going to define, all right, take this 1080p quadrant and follow the ball. Okay? Yep. It's volleyball. Say for volleyball, for example. Okay? Just follow the ball. And AI is going to know, keep the ball in frame. And that's in that 8K video, it's going to crop down to 1080p, and the quality is going to be good because it's 8K. It's going to follow around. Well, now say, show me track player 15. It's going to facial recognition. It's going to know that's player 15 based on her facial attributes, and it could just follow that player around. So there's AI tracking cameras already that exist, and it's only going to get better. And you have still photography experience.
Yep.
Do you shoot Canon?
I shoot Sony.
So Canon, when they announced their new R5 line, they have an AI piece of that can do facial recognition with multiple components. Meaning, all right, say you want to shoot your kid's soccer game, and you only want to see when they're in frame. If you're following the ball and they're not in the frame, it won't take any pictures. But as soon as they're in the frame, it'll start taking pictures based on recognizing their face. Okay, well, your son or your daughter's not in there. Well, show me a secondary target. Okay, that secondary target's there, but the first one's not. So now it knows you can assign parameters for even still photography these days. That it'll start taking pictures as soon as it recognizes the secondary target, third. So
yeah, which would be huge because anybody that got into photography knows that they have way more photos than they're actually ever going to use because they just hit that button.
Yeah. So it's, facial recognition has been a thing for a long time in photography, but it's getting to the point where it can take pictures based on who it knows is in the picture, whether they're smiling, all that kind of stuff. So AI is going to be a big part of the industry. It already is. I mean, I'm part of the ChatGPT pilot, and I use it to help me write crosstalk commands for the switcher. I can just type and say, all right, I want this gear to come on at this time, and then I want it to cross-dissolve into this, and I type it in. ChatGPT will spit me out a crosstalk command that I can just paste into the switcher, and it does its fancy work. It's also very great for finding things in manuals.
Oh gosh,
right.
Yes.
Searching user manuals I'm never going to go search a user manual. I'm just going to ask ChatGPT. We just did it. We're working for doing captions, closed captioning in the cloud, meaning Amazon Transcribe will listen to an audio feed from our broadcast and spit us out a live text that we can then turn around into our captioning encoder and do live captioning. Sub 1 second delay. It's incredible. We're very close to making that work. But we had to figure out, okay, what format does it need to be in? What telnet commands does it need to use? And all I had to do was just say, this encoder, find me these settings. And here it is. I didn't have to go download the manual. I didn't have to find it. It just spit it out for me, and then we were on our road. And we were able to use the Amazon Q scripting to say, I want to do this, add these values, done. And most of it was in AI. Most of it was done in AI.
Sounds almost too convenient.
It is. I'm not a coder. That's not something. My career is in broadcasting. I learned the baseband end of it. I've learned more in the last 6 years about IT and networking and AI than I ever thought I would ever have to learn, because that's how fast the industry moved in that direction.
Oh, you did say you're a life learner.
Yeah. So I'm excited because it's all new and I love shiny and new things. So I like to be at the top, and Scott knows that I like to play with stuff. So he's always pushing me to be on top of these things.
That sounds like there are plenty of new opportunities for you to keep up with.
Yeah, it's definitely, and I'm excited to see what the next 5 years holds for this industry, specifically with AI, but just in terms of what the IP world looks like for video.
Okay, it's time for Consultant Quirks, where we ask our guests a few fun rapid-fire questions. So Sean, if you could have dinner with any person, living or dead, real or fictional, who would it be and why?
Oh, that's a loaded question.
It is.
I don't know. It's so hard because there's so many people that I would want to know their life story. Like,
Yep.
I can't narrow it down to one.
Well, give us one. Give us one example. You can spit off 5 or 10 names if you want, but let's walk down one of them.
Man, this is going to be. You're going to have to cut the segment out because I really can't think. I'm a big space nut.
Okay.
I like things in the sky, so I would love to have dinner with Neil deGrasse Tyson
Oh, there you go.
or Carl Sagan
Yeah.
or any of the astronomers of Galileo. Go back and meet him and have dinner with him and say, would you imagine in however long it's been that we'd have the International Space Station up there? Or fun fact, we did an interview with the space station. We did a live. There's an ND alum who was on the space station. We worked with him and we did a live shot with the space station. That was incredible.
Oh my gosh, how cool.
Wow.
Did you ever think you'd do that as part of the gig of coming
No,
in?
but it's I don't want to say it's a bucket list for me, but one of my absolute favorite hobbies is tracking the space station.
Okay.
I have my ham radio license. I've talked to and from the space station. I shoot photography of it, long exposures, you name it. Bucket list item for me for that was shooting the space station at the same time as the Aurora Borealis,
Oh my gosh.
which is very difficult to do.
Mm-hmm.
I would think so.
With at our solar maximum right now, we've had some incredible opportunities, and I never thought I would get it here in South Bend. Right, I grew up in Northern Michigan. I've been shooting the Northern Lights for over a decade, and it happened.
Oh, wow.
Right, and my dream was, because they have photographers they're all a bunch of space nuts up there. They have cameras. They shoot the Northern Lights all the time, but because of the positioning of the space station, they weren't able to because they couldn't see them because they were on the whatever. I'd have to show you the article to fully understand it, but there was no pictures of the Northern Lights from the space station during the time I got it with the space station, which I couldn't pair them two together. So my bucket list was half filled.
Awesome.
But yeah, so I would say mostly space related.
That's very cool.
Like take a trip to the JSW, the telescope and the web, and I'm all about that stuff, the space stuff. So anybody space related.
That's really cool. You might be interested to know my roommate in college was like the student director of our planetarium on campus and our observatory.
That's awesome.
So we would go after hours and we'd be checking out stuff.
We consulted with they're replacing the dome for the planetarium in Jordan, and we worked with them a little bit for some audio stuff. So once they're done, we get a little sneak preview of the new laser projectors.
Oh, that's
that'll be fun.
Too, so.
That'll be fun.
That'd be a fun place to geek out. So it sounds like you're in the right job for yourself. I mean, it sounds like it's very intense and that's where you want to be. But if you could swap jobs with anyone for a day, what would it be?
Car mechanic.
Yeah? Why is that?
I love wrenching on cars and motorcycles. Something I grew up doing, and I just, I do my own brakes. I do most of my own car maintenance. So it'd be fun maybe not fun. Maybe that's a bad idea. I don't want to be necessarily customer facing in that industry, but a car mechanic. I would just love to be able to wrench on cars for my job.
Excellent.
And then final question, Sean. If the one app on your phone that you cannot live without.
Probably Reddit.
Why?
I'm not on any other social media. Now Reddit is, I can't say I'm not on any social media, but I can curate it, and yeah, okay, there's algorithms and stuff, but I can curate it a little bit more to my interests and get rid of the stuff I don't want to see.
Sure.
But other than that, it's the camera app on my phone. I'm a big photographer. One of my biggest mentors always said the best camera is the camera in your hand.
Correct.
Okay. You can make art with whatever camera you have. It's not always about the camera. It's about the person and the vision. So the camera app, Reddit. I'm a big I worked in news for the majority of my career before I came into Notre Dame. So I have a lot of news background. So I just like keeping up with current events and world events. And I feel like Reddit is a great place to get that. You just, like any other social media platform, you just have to be careful.
All right. It's time for Tech Tips and Tricks. At this point in the show, we will highlight tips and tricks that we learned from you, our listeners. We would love to hear your ideas. Simply email them to btspodcast@indy.edu. That's Behind the Screens podcast at indy.edu. So Sean, since you're here, we're going to pick your brain a little bit. Could you tell us a little bit about maybe you talked about how the video engineering and the broadcast engineering and networking are so intertwined and yet so sometimes at odds, but I mean, it's such a complex space. Maybe you could help us out a little bit with that.
So there are a handful of free resources that I recommend anybody that wants to even remotely get into video engineering or audio engineering or networking at all. There are a couple free resources that I would recommend. One of them is by a company called Audinate, which does they produced a product called Dante, which is a audio over IP protocol. They have a free resource where you can go to their website, you can download their Dante level 3 certification and go through there's 3 steps, level 1, level 2, level 3. It's all free, gives you a rudimentary basic understanding of how audio over IP works, but it gives you the core fundamentals of networking. If you don't know networking, you're going to be able to go, oh, I can understand, okay, here's a VLAN, this is a subnet, this is how you get audio from point A to point B on a network. And the level 1 is very basic. Then you can go into level 2 if you want. Level 3 is a little bit more advanced. But then there's also a network protocol called NDI, which stands for Network Defined Interface. They have a ton of free resources. Again, it's mostly just going to be networking, but it's about how you can use your computer to create an NDI stream and view it on your network at home, across campus, etc. They have a ton of free resources on there that you can go and you can just follow. They called it the NDI University or New Tech University at the time. Don't know what it's branded as now, but it's you go to VizRT's website. You can look at their little university page that allows you to see these resources and get them. But I encourage anybody that wants to get into it, there's a ton of free resources. Just get on there and try it. Download OBS, download NDI tools, generate a free stream. There's so many free resources to get in there and create your own video stream to YouTube or Twitch or whatever.
Awesome. Wonderful. Thank you again so much, Sean.
Yeah.
This has been great.
Thanks. I look forward to anybody's streams that may have learned some information from me.
That's right. Wonderful. So join us next time for a live session from the IT retreats. We will be in Mendoza in a room to be determined, but we will be having a conversation about artificial intelligence. We're going to be speaking with Brandon Rich and maybe a handful of other folks. But the exciting thing is you get to be part of the conversation as well. We will be taking questions from the audience. So you get to be a part of the podcast world. You get to join us too. So until then, thank you everyone for listening.
Signing off from Behind the Screens, IT at ND.
Stay tech savvy, Notre Dame.